Welcome to Crop Around the World, where we want to share the impact your walk is having on others around the world. And we are joined today with a few of my colleagues. We have Jovana Savic and Jovana Kokir from our CWS Europe office. And so I would like to introduce them both to you, and then they're going to share more about our work in CWS in our Europe office. So Jovana Savic has 24 years of experience in design and financial management of development programs, participating in programs and research spanning the Western Balkans, North and Northeast Africa, and the Caucasus. She joined CWS in 2010 and is currently in the position of CWS Europe Regional Coordinator. And Jovana Kokir has experience in development and human rights issues with a focus in Western Balkans and Eastern Europe from non-governmental organizations and international organizations. Jovana holds a Master's of Art in Humanitarian Affairs, and she joined Church World Service in 2017 and works as Senior Project Manager for the Roma community and our Renewable Energy Technologies programs. So thank you to both Jovana and Jovana today for joining us, and I will pass it off to you now.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you so much for inviting us and for giving us this opportunity actually to, although virtually, still be connected to our wider CWS family. Both Jovana and myself are based in Belgrade, and we currently cover our programs in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, and Georgia. As I'm sure many of you know, we currently had one more crisis in Europe. The conflict between Russia and Ukraine is not showing any signs of stopping. CWS is responding. We have the humanitarian assistance team in Moldova currently. And I'm sure, you know, we were thinking to include in this presentation, to include some statistics and information about our work currently in Moldova in response to Ukrainian refugees and people coming and transiting through Moldova. But I think you need to have a separate information with the humanitarian assistance team leader, and I'm sure they'll be able to fill in the full 15 minutes with updates and news and CWS's response. So during this presentation, we will not be covering any CWS's response in to Ukrainian crisis. We will be mostly covering. I have 7.5 minutes left to kind of talk a bit about our refugee and migrant work, primarily in Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina. And we decided to focus on our child protection work. And I'm just sorry, going back to those beautiful two pictures, this is from our Roma program. It was a beautiful campaign, lovely campaign run by our local partners. These are Roma kids holding the signs that tackle some of the most entrenched prejudices the Serbian people have about Roma population in Serbia and in the region. The girl on the left side is holding the sign saying, my parents wish to work, because one of the prejudices in Serbia is that Roma people do not wish to work. The little man on the right side is holding the sign, I'm attending the school regularly. Again, one of the prejudices is that Roma kids don't want to go to school, and the parents are keeping them out of school. So this is, we thought this was a fun, beautiful way to start our presentation. Next slide, we can go to our migrants and refugees. And the next slide. We do have a child protection program in both Bosnia and Serbia. I think some of you familiar with our work with unaccompanied and separated children in the US will find many similarities. And I do think that we are responding in similar ways in the US and in our region as well. We can, some of you that know the US program can find some similarities, like, the children, the unaccompanied children that are showing up in the US usually are showing up because of very similar push and pull factors like we are seeing here. Those are usually boys in our region, primarily boys, between 14 and 17 years of age, traveling alone. Or boys that have been separated from their primary caregivers, sisters, brothers, family members, or boys that have been traveling along all the way. And I think in our region, as I suspect in the US as well, we are seeing very similar both push and pull factors. People are traveling. If they're not refugees, they're usually traveling because of economic reasons, because of poverty, because, families always choose one kid and pay for the trip so that this kid can, reach some desired country, which is usually the Western European country, in the case of Serbia and Bosnia. So we are working, in some ways we do have, and we work in similar context, but in other ways we do have some contextual differences here in Serbia, because primarily we are working with population who is transiting. For most of those people, especially unaccompanied and separated children, they don't see Serbia as a desired destination. They're just transiting, and they want to reach some, European country. We are seeing children, so that this may be one of the differences, when people reach US, they usually see US as a desired destination. So that could lead to some different programmatic responses in terms of how we work with unaccompanied children in US and how we work with them in our region, in Serbia, in Bosnia in particular. We have very, unlike US, or I still don't know whether it's similar or different, we don't have a very approachable legal system. We don't have legal pathways. As you know, from 2016, almost all of the European countries all but shut down all of the legal options and legal pathways for refugees and migrants. So it's very difficult to travel legally unless you don't want to spend a decade stuck in either Serbia, Macedonia, Bosnia, or somewhere along the way. And this is one of the primary push factors, right, that people are traveling illegally and crossing the borders illegally, because we don't have legal pathways. Even for those people who wish to stay in Serbia and Bosnia for good or for a prolonged period of time until they have funds, until they recuperate and recover from their journeys, it's very difficult to actually access legal pathways, because for most of them, this is not a desired destination, but for many people, they could see Serbia and Bosnia as a desired destination, maybe not for good, but temporarily. But our government has been really strongly discouraging access to asylum, access to any legal pathways. So we do have very, in terms of the approved asylums for refugees and migrants, especially unaccompanied children, I think last year we had 5. And on the other hand, we do have very little people applying for the asylum and very little applications because the procedures are not clear. People, transiting through Serbia and Bosnia usually don't know where to go, how to access legal aid and legal help, even those that would like to stay longer here. So this is one of the primarily different contexts for our teams working in the US on welcoming refugees and migrants, and especially unaccompanied and separated children, and what our teams are doing here in Serbia and Bosnia. Most of the people arriving here are from Afghanistan and Pakistan. According to the most recent data, over 50% of people traveling through Serbia and Bosnia are from Afghanistan and Pakistan. And then comes Syria, Iran, Iraq. And for the last 6 months, our teams in both Serbia and Bosnia are noticing an increase in people traveling from the African countries, traveling through our countries. many people, especially since COVID-19, this is not that our countries were specifically welcoming to people on the move, but COVID-19 brought really great disruptions to the system. The borders were closed. People were, at one period, both in Bosnia and in Serbia, their movement was completely stopped. Restrictions on the movement were really, really severe. In Serbia, people couldn't leave the accommodation centers and shelters, which kind of led throughout at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, led to really people being afraid to approach official systems of protection. And now, in this recovery COVID-19 phase, we are seeing more and more people actually opting out to travel completely out of the systems, completely incognito, which is very worrying in terms of the unaccompanied and separated children. One thing that worries us as well is that, some estimates are showing, and I'm saying estimates because no one has exact numbers, because so many people, opt out to travel completely out of sight of systems. The worrying trend is that we are seeing, some estimates put the number of unaccompanied children at anywhere between 8 and 10,000 in Serbia in the last year, and anywhere between 6 and 8,000 in Bosnia during actually this year, during 2022. And very small percentage of those children end up in any official capacity, with any legal help, with any protection assistance, being sheltered. They're usually, squatting outside of the official reception facilities. They're traveling in groups with single older men. They're being really exposed to different risks. Our teams very often are finding children with physical injuries, either because they were pushed back from some border crossing, or they were sleeping rough outside without any protection, without any assistance, food, shelter, etc. So we are seeing children in very dire circumstances. So that may be one of the differences in our response as well when you compare to CWS's response in the US. So when we see unaccompanied children, we have a very short time frame in which we can act and protect that child. And one of the important differences is that we have what is called a legal guardianship system. Legal guardians can be mandated, usually the social welfare centers in both Serbia, and the system is completely the same in both Serbia and Bosnia. Usually social welfare systems would mandate either social workers or the partner organizations to serve as legal guardians for the children who are unaccompanied on the territory of Serbia and Bosnia. Once we started responding to a refugee and migrant crisis in both Serbia and Bosnia, we quickly realized that social systems and social protection systems and welfare centers in both countries don't have capacities to offer this kind of service. They have capacities which are really limited and cannot even cover the needs of local populations. So we are working in partnerships with social welfare centers who are mandating CWS to provide frontline social protection to unaccompanied and separated children. And we've been doing that in successful partnerships since 2019. What we've been seeing, as I said, in this post-pandemic period, is more and more unaccompanied children not wanting to be accommodated in the centers, preferring to travel unnoticed and undocumented. And so we kind of changed, we are flexible enough to be able to change our response and to cover the gaps. So we changed our approach, and we have currently a unique outreach team that is comprised of child protection officers and legal guardians, who is covering the entire canton. Una Sana canton is the place where we work, where most of the refugees and migrants coming to Bosnia are coming. So this is the area which is bordering Croatia. Croatia is just some 15 kilometers away, and this has been a hotspot since refugees and migrants started coming to Bosnia and Herzegovina. And you can see, I won't go into details of what specific protection activities we are offering to unaccompanied and separated children. You have that on the slide, and you can use the slide as a reference. And we do a very similar thing in Serbia. In Bosnia, we are responding directly. In Serbia, we are working through local partners and providing a very similar service, which you can see on the next slide. In terms of the, you can go to the next slide. In terms of the trends that we are currently seeing, we are seeing number of arrivals. So just to paint a picture, during the last 2 years, at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, we had an estimated 50,000 arrivals in Serbia in a year, and an estimated 30,000 arrivals in Bosnia. Now, what we are seeing since the beginning of 2022 is, a return to pre-pandemic numbers. Serbia has welcomed an estimated 75,000 this year since the beginning of 2022, and Bosnia an estimated 45,000. So we are seeing an increased arrivals, primarily from Afghanistan and Pakistan. So most of the unaccompanied children that we are seeing in both Serbia and Bosnia are young children coming and young adults coming from Afghanistan primarily. People were used to come from Pakistan, and they will continue to travel through Serbia. But Bosnia has recently signed a readmission agreement. This is, in short, it's such an European context. Readmission agreements would allow now Bosnian government to forcefully return Pakistanis from Bosnia to Pakistan. This agreement was signed in 2021, but it went into effect in July 2022, and already some of the Pakistanis were forcibly returned from Bosnia in July and August. So we really don't know, and we are noticing a decrease in number of Pakistanis traveling through Bosnia currently, which is worrying because at the same time we have the worst flood in Pakistan in several decades, and already the humanitarian organizations are kind of sounding the alarm that may lead to an increased number of Pakistanis trying to reach Europe and other countries for safety, because this will be a prolonged humanitarian effort in a country that's already ravaged by poverty. So it's been interesting. This is one of the trends that we are trying really to follow and to be prepared to respond to if we at any point see an increase in refugees and migrants coming from Pakistan. One more thing that we are following is Syrian refugees from Turkey. As some of you know, maybe Turkey hosts approximately estimated 3.7 million Syrian refugees. They are now announcing in the last week or two that they will try to reach Europe through caravans, which is also one more thing that may be similar to the US context, because the Turkish President Erdogan recently announced that he will start forcibly returning Syrian refugees to Syria, many of whom do not want to go back to Syria, many of whom wish to stay either in Turkey or to travel forwards to Europe. So this is one of those trends that could impact next year the number of refugees and migrants, and especially unaccompanied and separated children traveling through Serbia and Bosnia. So we are currently, as I said, in Bosnia working through outreach teams, primarily focusing on identifying and providing rapid and immediate protection services to unaccompanied children. And in Serbia, we are doing a very similar thing. with our partner, plus providing free legal assistance and free drop-in shelter for further referrals and offering protection services. And I just want to say thank you for this. I mean, we do have some other plans. It's so exciting. There's so many things. I was thinking, you know, before this presentation, there are so many changes in this specific program for refugees and migrants. The context is changing constantly. We are adapting our programs and services all the time. And it's so difficult actually to put such complex program in 7 minutes and to leave you with something that's usable for you. So I would leave you with a suggestion to have a thematic gathering with some of our, you know, child protection staff, legal guardians, us, and to have a thematic workshop actually and presentation around child protection. If you have time and interest, we would be available for such a meeting. Yes, and on this slide you can just briefly see who our partners are, the number of participants for these are the participants for the fiscal year. These would be completely different for the calendar year to 2022, but since we are reporting to CWS along the fiscal year, so these are the number of people that we managed to reach during the fiscal year 22.
Hello, everyone. I will be talking about our two other programs that CWS Europe is running. One is the Roma program and the other is the RAT program. So in our Roma program, CWS supports street-involved children, basically. Street-involved children are children who either live or work or both live and work on the street. In Serbia, those are children who are predominantly kids of Roma origin. And as you probably know, Roma population is widely discriminated all over Europe, and Serbia is no exception to that. In Belgrade, majority of them live in extreme poverty in so-called informal settlements. Those are very shabby houses that look like sheds, basically, often without running water, in many occasions without even without electricity. Roma people in Belgrade are either unemployed and living off state social assistance, or they work in some informal jobs such as collecting and then selling recyclables like paper, cardboard, paper, plastics, etc. What is interesting is that they often have their children working with them, helping them in collecting and selling recyclables. Also, it's very likely that you will see Roma street children working in busy crossroads in Belgrade. For example, they will offer that they will clean your windshields for some small fee, or they will be selling some small items. And unfortunately, many occasions you will also see them begging. For these children, spending time in the streets puts them in risk of violence. That includes sexual exploitation, trafficking. This also impacts their health, their well-being. It hinders their development. Also puts them in a high risk of drug abuse. Spending time in the streets for Roma kids means that they are less likely that they will go to school on a regular basis. They will also often drop out from school at early age. And all that results in them not being able to leave this vicious circle of poverty. At the moment, we are running two projects in Belgrade. One is the drop-in shelter for the street-involved children, and the other is called Protection Through Education, which is an education-focused program. Basically, drop-in shelter is a service where street-involved children can find protection and they can find safe space, first of all. In shelters, children can get three meals a day. They can use shower facilities. They can get clean clothes, which is usually secondhand clothes donated by the citizen. Citizen, just for information, are really supportive of the shelters. Children can also spend some quality time in different types of workshops, or they can just spend some time playing with other children. On top of that, they will receive learning assistance with homework, with some lessons that they need to catch up. The educators from the shelters will work with them, but they will also work with their parents to motivate them to go regularly to school and to explain to them the importance of education. Why is it good for them to actually attend school? The team will also help parents when dealing with institutions, for example, when they need to obtain personal documents, or when they need to apply for the social assistance or connect with welfare centers for some other reasons, or when they need to enroll their children to school or attend parents' meetings in school and so on. There's also a psychologist in the shelter that provides counseling to children. And there's a nurse that also can give health advice or refer children to some health facilities if needed. The result is that the more time kids spend in the shelters, the more time they spend at school, they will spend less time in the streets. Some of them, at least half of the children that are actually attending the shelters now have already stopped working in the streets completely. And we have around 85% of children who are in the shelters who are actually also enrolled in school and attend classes regularly, which is a great success, and especially in comparison to the general Roma population. Our other program is called Protection Through Education, and as I said before, it's focused on education. It involves only a small group of Roma children from informal settlements. Those are children who are of preschool age and first grade age. And just for your reference, in Serbia, preschool lasts for 1 year, and that's a year before the start of elementary school. As I said, Roma kids in general, in comparison to the general population, attend school in much smaller percentage, and even smaller number than that actually completes the elementary school. This program is offering them a comprehensive learning assistance. That means, and the program works with children, but also with their parents. It's assisting parents with collecting documents and enrolling children to school. It also offers learning assistance present at school classes that are working with children from the program, because these children will often fall behind their classmates, and these learning assistants are actually helping them to better understand the lessons. And there are also regular educational workshops that are organized after school, where children can practice basic calculus, practice learning and reading and writing Serbian, because in many occasions Serbian is not their native language, it's not their mother tongue, so they have difficulties in mastering the language. And which is there are also some free time activities which mean a lot to these children, because in many in general they cannot do them in their own time, like their parents cannot afford those things, and so the program will take kids to ice skating or visiting zoo or bowling, or they will take them for some picnics at nearby lake, and these are things that kids appreciate quite a lot. I think I don't have much time left, so I'm going to switch now to our RET, Renewable Energy Technologies program. This is the program that we're running in Moldova and Georgia at the moment. We used to have one leg of the program in Bosnia and Herzegovina in the past, but now due to lack of funding, we didn't have any activities in this program in Bosnia in the last, I think, couple of years, maybe last time in 2019. In this program, we are actually, we can turn on the next slide. Yeah. We are working there with rural communities, very often focusing on women and on young people in those communities. and we basically help them to fight poverty and especially energy poverty. And it's funny that now energy poverty is something that the entire Europe will be facing this upcoming winter, but communities we are working with are actually facing energy poverty for like decades before. And in simple terms, energy poverty would mean that sometimes around 30% of your income would go for energy bills. Electricity and gas are very expensive in both Georgia and Moldova because they're completely imported. And at the same time, these families often have a lot of unemployed members or people who are working but for very small wages. So basically, they cannot afford to use electricity and gas in some regular amounts. And that would lead them to burning firewood or some other fuel which is damaging both their health but also to the environment with the CO2 emissions and deforestation. So this program basically offers them a green alternative. It offers them renewable instead of conventional energy. Through this program, we're working with our local partners, and we would install solar panels and solar water heaters to the households. In this way, we are helping people to save electricity and use electricity and reduce electricity costs. We would provide them with fuel-efficient stoves where they can burn briquettes made of biomass and some forest residues that are available in their communities. We also train them on how to make those briquettes. These stoves and briquettes can also reduce energy costs and are more environmentally friendly. We would also provide households with solar dryers. This is activity that is usually focused on women in those families. Women can use those dryers to dry aromatic herbs or dry fruits and later sell those products, and in this way earn some income, additional income. This activity is, for example, very popular in Georgia. It's very well welcomed in Georgia because Georgia is in general well known for their dried products, dried fruit. They're even exporting it in big amounts. We also in selected households create this so-called demonstration farms, like model farms that host different types of renewable energy technologies. So those that I already mentioned, but also some that are needed for water filtration. There are some composting bins, etc. And these model farms basically serve as their name said, as models for other members of the community. And the result is that we're having so many people. Last year we had 22 people who actually replicated some of the technologies they've seen on those farms, and they've decided that they will replicate some of those renewable energy technologies in their own households when they see the benefits that those technologies can bring. We also train communities on how to construct those technologies, how to run them, how to maybe repair them if needed. And we support communities to gather into social enterprises and agricultural cooperatives, which are also based on these technologies. We learn communities how to run those cooperatives, how to sell and market those products, and in this way, we are also improving their livelihoods. Since last year, we are also running a similar project in Georgia with population that was displaced due to climate change and due to some natural hazards such as avalanches and severe droughts. This project is actually part of a wider CWS global project that is dealing with climate change migration. And basically, we are trying to build the resilience of those climate change migrants by improving their livelihoods, and basically improving their knowledge on general climate change risks and training them how to adapt to climate change. And we can go on the next slide. Yeah. And just like for a small reference, I'm guessing that you're already familiar with this, with the LDS Giving Machines project, because that's again, it's running in different regions globally. But when it comes to Europe, we are working in Georgia, Moldova, and Bosnia and Herzegovina. And we are supplying rural families with chickens, pigs, sheep, goats, and beehives. And we also train communities how to breed those animals, how to do beekeeping. And through this program, we actually enable people to improve their livelihoods. So they can, for example, produce honey or some other honey-based products. They can produce milk and cheese from goats and sheep, or they can sell any excess eggs and meat, and in this way earn income and actually improve their livelihoods. Thank you. I think we passed our presentation time, but still, I think it was useful for the audience.
It's all right that you've the time. It's wonderful information. Thank you, both of you, for sharing more about our programs in CWS Europe, and I know there's even more happening. So it's exciting to hear all the different ways that we are doing really good work. It's exciting to hear how, because of the funds that people that are listening today are raising through the Crop Hunger Walk, it also allows us to be very flexible. You know, I heard you saying that we could change the approach as times change and as people moved differently through these countries, that we could adapt our programming to serve them. And I think that that's really cool, and something that as we go out and ask people to support our Crop Hunger Walk, that we can share with people, is that these funds allow us to really be relevant and flexible in how we can respond to the needs in around the world. So thank you both. Heather, do you want to pop on as well, and we can take some question and answer at this time? So for those of you participating, if you have questions and haven't asked them yet, go ahead and start typing those into the question box, and we will start taking your questions.
Well, we do have one I can start with, and it's, do the Roma children attend government, and as we would say in the US, we call them public schools, are they mainstreamed into classrooms?
Could you repeat the question? So in public schools.
Oh, yeah. It was from Leslie, so she said that they're probably called government schools over there. We call them public here. And in the US, when Roma children go to school, are they mainstreamed into the classrooms in Serbia?
I'm not sure I understand. Are Roma children mainstream?
Yes, yeah, we do have our schools. Most of our schools are actually public schools.
Yeah,
Okay.
called state schools.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, most of the kids go to what you would call in the US context the public school. This is the usual school in Serbia and in the region as well. And yes,
yeah,
they
like
are.
99% of schools are public. Yeah.
When
they're mainstreamed in a sense that they are not. If you think if they are attending classes with other students and if they're integrated in the school environment, yes, absolutely. If they're sitting in kind of mixed classes, it was a problem for Serbia for quite a long time that we used to send Roma kids to kind of special education schools because most of them were late with enrolling to school. You know, they weren't enrolling at an appropriate age. So the state was dealing with that by sending them, you know, to kind of special education schools, which are for, you know, usually kids with developmental problems and issues. But that has changed. That has changed a lot, especially over the last decade. Jovana, if you want to add something, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, yes, as Jovana said, they are mainstreamed in the sense that, yes, they are now attending those state public schools regularly, like all other children in Serbia. The only issue is that sometimes, but it's also from case to case, like basically from school to school, it depends. They still face discrimination sometimes in schools. It really depends on the teacher they are assigned to. So for example, from the 1st to 4th grade, in like those early grades, if they have very understanding teacher and somebody who is willing to go an extra mile to kind of, because the problem, as Jovana said, Roma children often, they are either late for school, like late to enroll to school. In Serbia, you would go to school start school with at 6 or 7 years old. Sometimes they would be older than that. Also, sometimes their language skills maybe won't be on the same level. So it is on the teacher, again, to do some extra work with them. This is why those learning assistants that our program is offering, actually, they do a great, they help teachers a lot, because sometimes teachers basically don't have enough resources. They don't have enough time to dedicate to all children equally. And sometimes those teachers that are not so willing to work additionally with the Roma children, they would often let them pass the grade without acquiring appropriate level of knowledge, but that's again problem with the school system in Serbia. It's something that we are trying to influence a bit through talk with teachers, but it's again something that is mostly out of our hands, not our own, but of the civil society in general.
Well, I will move on to another question if you two are ready. This one is, with the crisis that's happening in Ukraine and its reduced ability to export commodities, including fruits and vegetables, is there any speculation how this will increase these micro businesses' values? So are you seeing an increase in the value of the micro businesses for the agriculture?
Well, at this point, I don't have that information, but it's a good comment, and it should be something that we should pay attention to, definitely. And maybe this is a good opportunity, especially for those enterprises in Georgia, because I know that they had, like in the past, they had some really good, so in the past, there was several enterprises that were created in like 2017, 2018, and they had some agreement with German importers. So they were exporting their goods to Germany. And so not only in Georgia, but they were exporting them even abroad. So this could be, yeah, a good opportunity for unfortunately, so one crisis sometimes it is a good thing for at least the economy of another, which is a paradox. But, yeah. But I will look into those information and let you know. I can get back with. I'll talk with our partners in Georgia and check on that.
We have somebody who would like to have we keep saying Roma, and they're not clear what that is. So if one of you would like to just give what Roma stands for. Who are they, is what they're asking. Who are the Roma?
Roma it's an ethnic group. Colloquial term, maybe that's something you will be more familiar with, is gypsies. But again, it's not used anymore because it doesn't have a good connotation anymore in Europe. But maybe people are more familiar with that term. So basically, it's an ethnic group originally from South Asia, from India, but centuries and centuries ago, they migrated all over the world, especially to Europe. Roma live in basically every European country, but sometimes they're referred also as travelers as well, especially in Western European countries. They're also known as travelers, not only Roma, but Balkan, so Western Balkan, but also so Serbia, former Yugoslavia, Romania, Bulgaria, but also Slovakia, Czech Republic, Hungary, they're hosting, so Central and Eastern Europe and the Balkans are hosting quite a large number of Roma population. So it's an ethnic group. They don't have, we cannot say that they're a national minority because they don't have the country where they're originally coming from. So, but they've been living in Europe, in different countries for centuries, together with other majority population.
We also had a question where that we have a few people who don't know what LDS stands for. So maybe somebody could speak what that stands for and maybe a little bit more about what the giving machine is.
Well, LDS is the charity. So LDS stands for the, oh my God, what's the acronym?
Church of the
Latter-day Saints.
Yeah.
Latter-day Saints, yeah.
And
the
CWS
giving,
is partnering.
yeah, they're charity organization. So they're running this amazing project called Giving Machines. So basically, as I understand, giving machines are like almost like ATMs or like vending machines. They're installed in different parts of the US, especially around the holiday season. So this is the time to look for them, like Thanksgiving and later during Christmas season, where basically people can choose on those machines to what they will donate, whether it's gonna be 3 chickens for a family in Moldova, or 1 pig from family in Georgia, or 1 pig for family, I don't know, somewhere in Latin America. And basically, so like on the vending machine, you choose the product and you donate the money through your card. You basically swipe your card and that's the donation. Very simple method, but very, I guess, very effective.
I always think it's buy a chicken instead of Doritos.
Yeah.
I think, real quickly, let's see. There was a talk of a program that had to be cut, and they're asking what program was that got cut?
So it was the RET, Renewable Energy Technologies in Bosnia. So we basically didn't receive any funding for that. Especially so when COVID has started, and now with the Ukrainian crisis, so many funds were actually kind of moving into that direction, leaving less funding for some ongoing old projects. So we basically had to cut those in Bosnia. In Bosnia, the renewable energy technologies programs was consisting of solar panels that were installed in houses that didn't have electricity at all. So they were not connected to the grid, to the public grid, to the central public grid. Those were mostly houses in remote villages in mountainous areas of Bosnia. The public grid was destroyed during the civil war in former Yugoslavia in the 90s. And since then, it was never reconstructed. So basically, people who returned to their houses, so the returnees, they've been living sometimes 10 or even more or 15 years without electricity at all. And the program was allowing them to have at least basic electricity. So those were solar panels and those converters and inverters. So those machines that actually convert solar energy into the electricity, and then allowing these people to connect fridge, have television, and have a TV set and lighting in their houses, which is, of course, I mean, it's 21st century. We think it's essential thing to have electricity in your house, and we take it for granted, but these people were actually in the middle of Europe living without electricity for years. Yeah, and this program actually allowed them to reconnect again and have electric power. But yeah, that was the program that was cut, and we are hoping that we will manage to receive funding so we can continue with that maybe next year.
That's a great segue as we want to wrap up, that as you are participating, our participants today in the crop chat are doing your fundraising, there is growing need around the world. The Ukrainian crisis is causing a food crisis in many places, but as you're hearing, there are more programs, more ways we'd like to respond. And so the more funds that you raise this fall, the more good we can do around the world. So thank you, Jovana, for joining us today and sharing about our programs. We are so grateful to learn about that. If there were a lot of questions that came in, if we didn't get to one of your questions, we will make sure that your community engagement staff person that works with your walk will get back to you with the questions that we weren't able to answer today. And I just also want to make a plug for those of you listening that every month Church World Service does a live stream on our Church World Service Facebook and YouTube channels. And our conversation in September, which is next Wednesday, September 21st at 3 p.m., we will be having a conversation with Church World Service's CEO, Rick Santos, and he is going to be discussing the war in Ukraine and its impact on global hunger. So very relevant, and we'll talk, and I think that will also talk about some of the other programs that we didn't talk about today that we're doing in response to the Ukrainian crisis in Moldova. So please join us. Again, that's Wednesday, September 21st at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And you will just join live. You can join live from our Church World Service Facebook page or our YouTube page. I think that Heather is putting links to those pages out in the chat for you to see, so you can join us then and learn more. Thank you again for speaking today, and thank you for all of you for joining us and listening and learning and asking your great questions. We are so thankful for you and your support and partnership.
Thank you for having us. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks. Hmm?